I had the menorah built. It was put into Saddam Hussein's palace. And so I figured maybe 10 or 15 Jews might be there. But when I got there, there were a couple hundred Jews there. And you can see pictures online. So I would go to different Jews and ask them, why are you here? And he said, because I told my Christian buddy I'm going to serve for him. And he got very angry with me. And he said, well, then we'll both be serving outside the line. You need to be with the menorah. Because during the Gulf War, Saddam Hussein sent over 39 Scud missiles to kill Jews. He says, you need to be there. Because he did it to Israel.
Welcome to Ordinary People with Extraordinary Stories. I'm Chana Weisberg, host of this podcast. Joining me today, we have an incredible couple who are both in the U.S. Army. We have Leah Bracha, who is a retired lieutenant commander in the U.S. Navy, and we have Chaplain Moshe Lans, who is a chaplain in the U.S. Army. They met in the Army. We have an incredible story of how they met, and they've had incredible stories all along the path. So welcome both of you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having us. Thank
you. So let's start with what you guys do before we even get into your background and how you got to there.
Okay.
You talk about being a chaplain.
All right, so I guess I'll begin. So I'm Moshe Lans. Hello, everyone. So first of all, I'm speaking to you from our home in Wiesbaden, Germany. Wiesbaden is a city. Wiesbaden is a very city. It's very close to Frankfurt, Germany, and we're talking to you from the United States Army base of Wiesbaden. So Wiesbaden is the name of the base. It's in the city of Wiesbaden, and it's in this country of Germany, which is the closest major city to us would be Frankfurt, Germany. And I'm a United States Army active duty chaplain. My rank happens to be a major. So active duty means it's a full-time job. So it's a full-time parnasa, full-time work for me. Thank God. It's my shluchus. It's what I do as a United States Army soldier. It's my mission. I like to explain to everyone that when it comes to Svias Hashem, to serving the Lubavitch Israeli's army, someone probably wants a low rank with low responsibility because the Rebbe asks so much of us. But when it comes to the U.S. Army, the higher rank, the higher pay. So we want a high pay.
Lieutenant Colonel will be good.
Yeah, right. But that's kind of facetious, kind of tongue in cheek, but that's just the reality, right? So yes.
And how long have you been serving in the Army?
That's a great question. So I started in the United States Army as a young person, at 17 years old, in the Army Reserve.
You just turned 50.
And I just turned 50. So you can do the math.
Wow. So you've had a long career in the U.S. Army.
I have. I've been on active duty, meaning full-time, day in, day out, since 2010. Wow. And now we're in 2026. Yeah. So 16 years active duty.
And I just wanted to let everybody know that when he's in the Army, his beard is much tighter to his face. It takes about an hour each day after he does his physical fitness. He makes his beard very close to his face, and he's very athletic. He's
so to all your female listeners, so that only with the guys do what they get to experience, I actually have that pleasure. The U.S. Army regulation for bearded soldiers right now is 2 inches. So my beard has to come no longer than 2 inches.
But just so you know, his beard goes way down to here.
It does.
Wow. Yeah. So you just put it up. Is that what you're saying?
Correct. I do. I have a way of putting it up with a series of rubber bands and with a series of bobby pins.
And he's off today because we have 2 days off for Veterans Day, which is really nice. So we had a fun day today, but he rolls his beard just relaxing during the day.
Yeah. So actually, I'd like to honor any of our veterans who are listening, whether it be from the United States military
or your wife.
All veterans, our coalition forces as well.
So tell us a little about a typical day that you would have. Like what is it that you do as a chaplain?
That's great. Yeah. So first of all, why are there even chaplains, right? Because in the United States of America, thankfully, we have freedom of religion. And we have the U.S. Constitution, and we have things that protect that. So the U.S. military employs chaplains, which means they are clergy or ordained individuals of respective different faith groups. So there's different chaplains. There's Christian chaplains, of which there's many different flavors or denominations of, Catholic, Protestant, and many others. And there's Jewish chaplains, which I'm very privileged and honored to be, a United States Army Jewish chaplain. There's Buddhist chaplains, all these different
Muslim
chaplains,
yeah.
imams. Absolutely,
Right.
yes.
Are there many Jews in the U.S. Army that you're servicing?
That's a great question.
Well, let me answer this.
I'll let my wife answer.
So Jews make up about 1% of the American population. And we find that in the U.S. military, from the Marine Corps, the Army, the Navy, the Coast Guard, that they make up close to 3% of the military. So Jews actually make up 3 times their percentage. So a lot of people think that Jews don't serve in the military. Jews actually serve in the military 3 times their percentage.
That's been our experience. Official records may show you less.
Because they don't sign up as Jewish.
Correct. Many people don't want to identify themselves. But what we have found when you actually look around and you start talking to people and you play Jewish geography, oh, I know someone, this and that.
Right. We took a walk around the base and we talked to this guy. He goes, oh, I'm Jewish. I said, is your mom Jewish? Oh, yeah, my mom's Jewish. Yeah. They don't even say that these people are Jewish, but they don't say Jewish on their dog tag.
No, they're not listing it. Yeah, so it's been our experience. And contrary to popular belief, what we find young Jews not going into what we call the professional ranks. Now, there's not all doctors and lawyers and rabbis.
They want to fight.
They are, among the more dangerous jobs.
The Marine Corps and the infantry and the Army.
Infantry, carrying machine guns.
EOD in the Navy.
Yeah. So we find, they want to get past the stereotypical of their parents, grandparents' age, and they very much want to show that they are proud of their Jewish heritage and that they are physically fit, mentally fit, and that they are representing their country. And I have the privilege and the honor of guiding them spiritually and providing for them. And my wife plays a very big role, as a Chabad shliach and shlucha. My wife being, I'm the shliach, of course, she's the shlucha. Together, we have a mandate for the Rebbe, and we are able to care physically as well as spiritually.
I make a lot of food. And I care for the soldiers. I care for the soldiers because we're much older. And so we're in our 50s. So for them to, we see these kids that are 18 years old or 25 years old, and they're young. And so we care for them very much. They have little babies. And so we care for them very much. We're there when they have their babies. We go to the hospital. We're there to feed them. We're there to take care of them. And I just want to say one thing. I happen to respect Secretary of War Hegseth. I think that he's done a lot of good and said a lot of good. So my husband, he joined the military. His father was wounded severely in Vietnam. And his mother also served in the United States Navy. My husband wears a beard. He puts it up high. My husband was in Iraq. He had to deal with 100 bodies in Iraq and other things that maybe we'll go into, maybe we won't. We both served in Afghanistan. It's terrible things we saw in Afghanistan. I joined the Navy. I'll tell you about that in a little while.
Yeah,
but
I want to.
My father was a part of UDT and Navy SEAL. And we're very committed to the U.S. military. We happen to love the United States. Just like Hegseth loves the United States, I used to be very athletic in the military. I actually was wounded, was injured in my head. And I just want Secretary Hegseth to know that even though my husband wears a beard and he's a chaplain in the military as a rabbi, that we are absolutely committed to the U.S. military, committed to President Trump and any other president who serves, and committed to the U.S. military. So we just want him to know that. And we're very proud of the military.
We're also apolitical.
And we're very apolitical.
Right.
We don't really care who serves.
Right.
We just actually serve. We actually have served under how many presidents?
A
lot of presidents.
A lot.
And we just serve everybody, and we just say, yes, sir, and we serve everybody.
So I'm curious what got you both into the military? Like what made you decide did you just wake up one morning and just say, okay, I want to join the military? What was it? Was it your parents' involvement?
Well, it's interesting because when I was in fourth grade, I loved the military and I thought I was going to join the Marines. And I told my father I was going to join right out of high school, and he said, no, go to college. And I went to college, and there was rabbis there, and I was interested in Judaism as well. and they said go to Aish Torah's Iyat Seminary, which is like an educational place for young girls in Israel, in Kiryat Sands. And I went to Aish Torah, and when I came back, both my mother and my grandmother passed away very short time from each other, and I was lost. And because my father was in the military, I decided to join the military, and I loved it. And at that point, I joined the reserves, and my and then 9/11 hit, and then I was pretty much active duty reserves after that.
Mhm.
I just, even though I went to Chabad and I loved the military and I became very religious and all that.
Well, how did you get to Chabad? Let's hear that part.
So I was working for Dennis Prager, and Shmuel Nechama Ben Hinda should be well and healed immediately. He's
That's his
quite
Hebrew
injured.
name.
That's his Hebrew name. He should be healed immediately.
Amen.
And I was working for Dennis Prager and loved it. And a man by the name of, a wonderful man by the name of Rabbi Moshe Brisky from Chabad of Agora Hills, Chabad of the Caneo. And he called me up to have Dennis Prager speak for him for Father's Day. And that took about 20 seconds to arrange that speech. And he asked who I was. And he was in his 30s and I was in my 30s. And he said, why don't you, I feel bad that your mom died. Why don't you come to Shabbos services? And I said, I'm so sorry, but I need to be with my community. So a year later, he called up for the same speech for Dennis to come for another speech, another 20 seconds. And he says, it's been a year. We both went over, from his brother's loss, my mom's loss. He says, why don't you try to come for Shabbos services? So I came and I fell in love with Chabad. It was so joyous and so meaningful. It's not that Aish Torah wasn't. It's just that everybody inside their own neshama, in their own soul, has a flavor. Some people like chocolate, some people like vanilla. For me, I happen to like Chabad. I love the joy. I love the way the women have their arms around each other. I just love the joy of Chabad. And from there, I just started learning more and doing more. It was just, I started learning more about the Lubavitcher Rebbe, the previous Rebbes. I started learning more Tanya. I happen to like a lot of learning. And in the Navy, I became an intelligence officer. And so between being an intelligence officer and learning more, I went to Crown Heights to learn more. That's a city, an area in Brooklyn. And it was just, and so I learned from his wife, Mati Brisky. I learned from my friends, Leah Levine, Toby Bistritsky, Bracha Sapakachinsky. I learned from all these people.
All the Rebbitzes in the Caneo.
Yeah, I just couldn't stop learning. And so that's how I became part of Chabad. I just couldn't. I just couldn't stop learning.
And then, what about you,
ahead.
Moshe? How did it work for you?
Yeah, so for me, again, starting the army for me, I was 17 years old. I was a junior in high school. I was looking for ways to pay for school because I knew I wanted to go on to college. College is, of course, very expensive.
He didn't have
were you religious at that point?
No,
were you like what?
grew up as a very culturally Jew, American Jew. We had to identify conservative members of a conservative synagogue. Relatively fairly active, went to services fairly often, even after my bar mitzvah. But nothing compared to what we call, Orthodox Judaism. Absolutely not.
Right.
Yeah.
You grew up where? Where did you grow up?
I grew up at that. So I was born in Massachusetts, and Worcester. I was born in Massachusetts, and then when I was 10 years old, we moved to South Florida, to Hollywood area, Pines area of South Florida. So when I was 17 years old, here I was, I'm looking for ways to pay for school. And the Army Reserves had the Army had many different programs, but the Army Reserves was one that resonated with me. It resonated with me, one, because there was a path forward to pay for school. It resonated with me because both my father was a post-Vietnam vet. My mother served in the U.S. Navy. So we were just very proud Americans. And so it very much spoke to me. And as I received the normal propaganda, I held on to the Army Reserve flyer. When you're turning almost 18, you receive a litany of mail. They tend to how the government knows how old you are, I guess. Imagine that, right? No, seriously. So I received all the normal propaganda. And my mother made comments. She goes, I know she held on to this one. And you've been reading it because it's kind of some creases. I underlined a few things. I said, yeah, I'm thinking about filling it out. Because you're thinking I'll fill it out and get in touch with the recruiter. So I did that, and the recruiter called me back. I met with the recruiter, and I took what's called the ASVAB, the initial test, and I ended up enlisting. And they had a program called Delayed Entry Program Split Option, which is 2 separate programs combined to one, which means ultimately that if you were going to be 18, I think it was the time that you finished, by the time you started your senior year of high school, like the first or second month, you could do basic combat training before you actually even started your senior year of high school, while you're still 17 before you turn 18. That's why it's called split option. And it was delayed entry because then you don't begin your full Army Reserve career until after you completed your training. So when most of my friends as a 17-year-old were off going to have fun in South Florida, doing the beach, doing their summer jobs, I went off to basic combat training in Fort Jackson, South Carolina. Little did I know that would be the first of 3 different graduations I would attend in Fort Jackson, South Carolina, as my career progressed, ironically. So that was my basic combat training experience.
And how did you get to Torah Judaism?
Yeah, that's a great question. So when we were seniors in high school, we had a yearbook. Typical, probably most of your viewers, that's something that resonates with them. And we had to kind of talk what we thought maybe our dream job was. Because we were already in the Army Reserves, and I knew that there was a shortage of Jewish chaplains. When I went to basic combat training, I experienced it because there was no Jewish chaplain at Fort Jackson. And Fort Jackson was one of the largest...
Now there's a big Jewish chaplain at Fort Jackson.
Yeah, exactly. But that was one of the largest places for basic combat training. So I knew what it was like to go. And so we had gotten on a bus and we went to like a conservative reform synagogue on most Fridays. And that was really, what is it, right? So I said, wow, it would be really interested if I could maybe become a chaplain someday. So I wrote down my dream job would be Jewish chaplain. I thought going to West Point would also be kind of fun because I knew West Point was very prestigious. I didn't have the GPA to get into it, but I thought, maybe I could at least somehow go there and serve one day as the Jewish chaplain. And then from there, my military career, thank God, progressed. And then when I went to college, the following calling, so I delayed my entry to college by a semester because after I graduated high school, I had to go back and do some advanced individual training, which is where I would learn the actual job I was doing in the Army. So basic combat training qualifies you to be a soldier. And then as an enlisted soldier, you do an AIT, advanced individual training. You learn your individual job. And I had chosen combat medic because I thought that would translate well into the civilian world if I wanted to do something. Not really sure they would do, but I thought it would be some skills set that would resonate with me. So that's what I had chosen. And then after that, I would begin college in the spring because that class went from like July through October.
So how did you become a Torah guy?
So in this fall, spring when I started college, I selected a very small parochial Jewish college in New York City because I wanted to explore some of my Jewish studies. And from there, they sent me to a yeshiva program, which for the first time at the age of 19, almost 20, was the first time I ever entered into a yeshiva, to an actual Jewish setting. Yeah, very intimidating. I had a very loose grasp what Aleph Beis was and how to read. I had no understanding what I was reading, barely could pronounce the letters of the words. And I applied myself. And I started to understand a little bit what authentic Yiddishkeit was and Torah Orthodox Judaism. Not Chabad, by the way. Totally different exposure.
Definitely not Chabad.
Absolutely not. Litvish, which is nothing wrong.
There's nothing wrong with Litvish.
Just a very different flavor of Judaism. And that's how I got into Judaism. How I got into Chabad, well, that's because of my beautiful wife. My beautiful wife opened my eyes, opened my heart, showed me nuances and new ideas, and explained to me what true joy or true simcha was, and how to be joyful like a chassid.
So I'm curious how you both met. Like, how did you come together? You're both working in the U.S. Army.
So I'll
You're
tell
both
this
doing
story.
your.
So my wife's actually in the Navy, and I'm in the Army. So I like to say
In the Navy and the Army?
I like to say we're Jewishly intermarried. I mean, we're both we're all Jewish, but we're intermarried in the fact that I'm Army and Jewish Navy. So
what happened is after 9/11. So before 9/11, I used to go on board ships, and I used to look at different weapons from other countries and let the captains on board the ships know what to look out for.
This was part of your job in the intelligence,
Yeah.
right?
And then after 9/11, I became more of a desert person. And so I had to travel throughout most of the Arab world, East Africa, Iraq, Afghanistan, that sort of thing. So I was always part of a joint group, joint interagency task force. So I was always with the Army, Air Force. I was always with different groups. And
what was it like as a Jew to travel through these places at the time?
I just felt very American, and anything that my commanders needed, I would let them know where the bad people were, because I was part of human intelligence. So I would let them know where the bad people were. I can't say what I did or how I did it. I let them know where the bad people were. I would put together operations, and then had nothing to do with it, but then special forces would take out the bad people.
So you were kind of the mastermind behind it all.
I was never a mastermind of anything. I was always part of a team, always part of a team, and I love being part of a team. But we would go to different places and find out where, and also a lot of the countries helped us out. Even some of the Arab countries would help us out because they didn't want certain bad people in their countries. So a lot of people think, oh, maybe the Arab countries wouldn't help us out or something like that. But they actually helped us out because they didn't want bad people in their country. So that was good. So a lot. So I was in Iraq.
Were you religious at that point?
Yes. Yep.
Yes. So you were going as a religious Jew. You were serving.
Yes, and I want you to know that in Iraq I had almost every single day Manischewitz matzo ball soup, and I can't have matzo ball soup at all right now. So I used to have cans sent to me. I used to have hundreds of cans sent to me, and I can't have matzo ball soup at all anymore. But yes, so anyway, I went to Iraq during the initial 03 pull, and then I was again in 05. I was there for about 14 months. And I met Moshe 20 years ago.
During that.
On Yom Kippur in Iraq. And I'll say how that happened.
Wow, yeah.
So Moshe had just arrived about a week earlier, and I was there for several weeks already, or about a month and a half. And it was probably about 140 degrees. I was at Forward Operating Base Liberty, which is about 3.5 miles away. No, I was Forward Operating Base Slair, which is 3.5 miles away from Camp Victory, which is where 4-star General Casey was running the war, a very good man. And he was running the war, and Moshe was at Forward Operating Base Liberty. Camp Liberty.
Yeah.
And
they're serving as a chaplain at the time?
No, I was a sergeant. I was still enlisted.
At that time, he was a chaplain's assistant.
Yep.
And
that was my second job in the U.S. Army Reserve.
And I know that the rule of Yom Kippur is to fast. So I had a very big decision. Should I walk the 3.5 miles to go to where shul was, where the synagogue was, or should I fast? It was so hot out.
In the 100-degree weather.
140 degree weather.
140, wow.
Plus Arizona thinks 140 degrees is normal, but for me it was hot. And plus it was very dangerous at that time. So I had to have a Kevlar helmet. Plus I had my M4 rifle. Plus I had my M9 gun.
Wow.
I had my Kevlar vest. I had my pads on, all the rounds that go with it. So I had about 50 pounds, 60 pounds extra, in addition to my regular weight. And to do that in that weather, it was very, I don't know, a lot of me felt like I should stay back, but I hadn't seen Jews in a while. And there's another reason why I couldn't see Jews in a while. For Friday night, it was very dangerous to walk there at night. It's another story. I could tell you why it was so dangerous. That's another story I could tell you. So I walked there, and it took about 2 hours to walk there. which doesn't seem like a lot in that weather, but that was very difficult to walk there. And I walked there, and it was a very nice man. It was an '05 Navy man, which means a commander, Rabbi Schranz, who was running the service. Very nice man, but he wasn't Orthodox. But that didn't matter to me because I just want to be with other Jews at that point. Jews want to be with other Jews. Even if they're eating lox and bagels, not that day, but you just mostly shop, mostly Yom Kippur. Like, that's all you care about.
Right.
But there was no machitza, there was no curtain between men and women, but I didn't care. I just want to be with other Jews. So I went to the back of the area, and that's where I prayed. That's where I davened. And so there were different people around. And there was a man out front who was the al-Chet in Yom Kippur. You make a fist. And so you're asking God for forgiveness. And you're just basically going like this. And so some of them singular. You're asking,
it's the confession prayer, right? That we confess our sin.
You do it in the morning, but you're asking on Yom Kippur, you're also doing it. And so sometimes you're doing it for yourself, and sometimes you're doing it publicly for all of Jews. So it depends what the prayer is. And so most people are doing normal. I do it very soft because I just spent the month asking for forgiveness. I've asked my friends for forgiveness. I've been giving to charity. So I'm Chabad, so I'm pretty gentle. Some people were more aggressive, but there was somebody there that was just so aggressive. I've never heard anything like this. And there was like 300 of those al-Khaits. And the bombs were coming in. The bombs were going out. It was very, very difficult in Iraq at that time. Right? You could hear the bombs. It was very emotional.
Must have been very scary, sure.
Well, for me, it wasn't.
You had already been there for...
I had been there for a while. And so for me, it was like, whatever. At some point in the war, you can only take so much.
Mm-hmm.
And so some people were going down to the ground. Some people were leaving. Some people were standing. I just stood there and I was just praying. But the guy in front was pounding himself so hard. And
as he's doing the confession prayer.
Yeah, and so Rabbi Schranz, he's a very nice man, but like every 15 minutes, he would say, I want to take a 20-minute break. So a lot of people liked that. I didn't like that, but it was fine, whatever. I really didn't care because I happen to like Rabbi Schranz, whatever. By the third 20-minute break, I couldn't take this guy banging himself. So I figured I'll go up to him. So I didn't know if he was a private or a general. So if he was a lower rank than me, I was already officer. So I figure if he was a lower rank than me, I tell him to stop it. I'm going to say, God loves you. Just relax. Everything's good. Don't worry about it. You're good. If he's a general, I'll just let him bang himself hard. What do I care? So I went up to this guy, and this guy was shuckling. Shuckling means to go back and forth like a flame. He's shuckling back and forth. So this guy's shuckling back and forth. So I started to shuckle with him. You can't believe how bad the bombs were. You cannot believe the bombs were going crazy, right? They were right by the shul. It was nuts. So I figured I was going to die anyway. So I was shuckling back and forth with this guy. And I asked him, oh my gosh, what did you do so wrong? So he kissed his siddur. And he went like this to his tallis. And he goes, oh, you don't want to know. And that's how I met my husband. That's how That's how I met Moshe. And I can't believe how hard he was hitting his chest. So finally, when we got married, I let him know, listen, do the thing a month ahead of time, and then God will forgive you. You can do it much more gentle. So that's how I let him know.
So people ask who our shadchan was, right? Who our matchmaker was. It's God vis-a-vis George Bush.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's very good. That's how I met my husband.
True story, 100% true. That's how we met.
Yeah.
So we met on Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement.
Between the Euphrates and the Tigris River.
Which is where the Gan Eden was, the Garden of Eden. So we were very blessed. And surely when Hashem sent, he had an idea. Of course, neither of us knew that at the time. But then that was 2005. And then we were married in 2009.
We got engaged in 2008, and it was a very interesting engagement. It's when Gavi and Rifki Holtzberg and the other people were murdered in Mumbai. And we have a monthly newsletter that we always send out to all the military, to about 1,000 military members. and goes all around the world.
It's called Dvekis.
It's called Dvekis, which means to be completely connected to God. And we always dedicate it to Gavi and Rifki Holtzberg. And we have their picture there. And we always dedicate it to them.
We've been publishing that newsletter since we've actually been in Afghanistan, which is our second deployment together in 2010. After we married, we both deployed to Afghanistan. And we were looking for a way to connect the Jews who are all throughout the country and even back in the States. So we ended up developing a Jewish newsletter, and we call it Dvekis.
What's so interesting about 2010, my family was all over the country. Moshe's family was all over the country. We knew we would disappoint them. We get 2 weeks off when you deploy.
At that point in time in the war, when you went away for 12 or more months for your leave, vacation, so to speak, usually got 14 days leave, and they had relatively inexpensive or even free airfare to almost anywhere that you were allowed proof to go for a leave.
So we got 2 weeks off. So we decided we're going to go to Israel. So we didn't want to disappoint any of our family members. So we went to
see everyone. We go East Coast, West Coast. So we decided we'll see no one.
So we went to Israel. We had a great time. And someone that we met was, Aleph Shalom was Label and Ita Bistritsky. So Label Bistritsky started Hatzalah in Crown Heights.
Many years earlier
from here. And we knew them and we loved them. And we met them. And their son Shlomo was there, and Label asked Moshe, what is it that you want? So Moshe says, we just want to enjoy all of Eretz Yisrael, all of Israel. And he goes, no, what is it that you want?
What is it that you need to bring back with you, in other words, to the war, because he knew that we were only going to be there temporarily.
So we said, we would like to have a Megillah, but we don't have much money.
Because Purim was going to be coming up in about 5-6 weeks, maybe.
Right, but we said we don't really have much money. Yeah. We knew it cost a lot of money. So
the Megillah was the scroll that we use for Purim. So you wanted to take
you wanted to take back a kosher scroll. I didn't have one with me.
So
you wanted to take it back for the Jewish people in the army.
Yes.
Right. Okay.
So we said a kosher scroll. So Label said, well, how much money do you have? So we were embarrassed to say. So we said, to be honest, we didn't even have it. We said $1,000. Which is nothing for a Megillah. So people should know, like, if you see a mezuzah this big, that's like $200, $250. So $1,000 for Megillah means nothing. So Label says, don't worry about it. So about 4 days later, Shlomo, his son Shlomo, who happened to be visiting Israel at that time, called us and says, come on over. My father has a Megillah for you. So we figured it would probably be about this big. And Moshe at that time was much younger. And he says, okay, I can read it, no problem. So we went over to Geula. It's a little town in Israel, in Jerusalem. And we said, okay, we'll go over there. And it's this big, beautiful Megillah. And he had it for us. So he said, I have a Megillah. He says, we have a case for you. How are you going to take it? So Moshe says, I'll put it in a trash bags, multiple trash bags.
Because what happened was for Purim, the idea was that I was going to be probably boarding a Black Hawk helicopter, and I was going to probably go with Kovitz, which is when you go out and you perform mitzvahs with people. So I would be going from base to base to base.
We always do helicopters.
And at that point in time, the grounds were very, very dangerous. So
this is in Afghanistan.
Yeah. So the preferred way to fly was to fly. Grounds were very dangerous. You have inordinate explosive devices, IEDs. So I said I'll probably be going to like 3 or 4 bases throughout the course of the day that have larger Jewish populations, and I'll read Megillah for them. And so I'll make sure that we're able to wrap it up such that it's protected from the elements. That was what I was going to do because it was too large to put in one Ziploc. But I said I could probably get
can't have a Ziploc this big.
But I said I could probably wrap it up tightly. Put it in the plastic tube it comes in, and put that and like a sealed trash bag.
Label Bistritsky says, no way. So he went to his closet, took out his Megillah, gave us his metal case, put it in, and gave it to us. Baruch Hashem, thank God, it was beautiful. So he passed away. He and his wife passed away. And about 5 or 6 years ago, his children were asking, where's Dad's Megillah case? They said, well, the Lanses have it. They said, we want it back. We said, of course we'll give it back. If the children want it, we'll give it back. So Shlomo and Toby said no. he gave it to them and blessed them. So they're going to keep it.
So I received a blessing from Rabbi Leibel Bershkivsky.
And I received it from Ita.
Yeah, so they benched us. They gave us a very special blessing. And thankfully, we survived the war.
We survived the war.
Thankfully.
And we've taken it from base. We took it to South Korea. We spent 2 years in South Korea. We did different, but we've always blessed them whenever we've had read the Purim.
So we've had an opportunity to travel the world with that Megillah. Yeah, absolutely.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
So, you mentioned before that you are a shliach. You are an emissary of the Rebbe and to teach Torah and to teach Judaism. Can you tell us some things that you do with people in the army that you feel you are an emissary of the Rebbe?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, so obviously the Rebbe had many different campaigns. So we try to conduct those campaigns in the military, similar to how civilian rabbis would do them. It was a little bit of a twist, of course, right? So, I mean, I've had people ask me, hey, this is my tank, and this is, so to speak, my abode where I'm living when I'm in the field. So would you mind installing my mezuzah to the hatch of the tank?
Wow.
Yeah, which is something that outside of Israel, by the way, you don't really have the opportunity to do. I actually consulted with the Aleph Institute, for those who are unfamiliar with it. The Aleph Institute is an organization in South Florida, and Surfside, South Florida was recreated by Rabbi Shalom Lipsker of blessed memory of Shalom, and they have two major components. They had originally started to take care of Jewish prisoners, and they eventually expanded to also service the U.S. military.
Where would you get the mezuzahs from? Would you get them from
Aleph? Aleph provided the majority of the mezuzahs. Absolutely.
So basically, Moshe does tefillin campaigns, mezuzah campaigns. He does Hebrew classes, JLI classes.
Wow.
He does stuff like that. I do babka bakes, challah bakes. I have them light candles with me. I give out candles. I do all. I'm going to be a Torah class soon, and then we do other things when we deployed. We did menorah. We did a menorah in Saddam Hussein's palace.
Menorah where? In Saddam Hussein's palace?
When he was still alive. Yeah.
Oh wow.
And we do.
How did that happen?
I'll tell you that in 1 second, but we went to Poland here and we did menorahs in Poland.
Last year we were able to spend a few nights at Purim. I've had the opportunity to help Jewish families make bris. I've had 3 or 4 different military couples, but arrange different brises.
We bring out moils for brises.
Whether it be, we've done one here in Germany.
We did in Korea. We brought out a moil from Hong Kong.
Hong Kong, we have 3 brisim there, in the U.S. as well.
Is it religious people who are in the army, or is it people who are just Jewish who are
That's a great question.
United in their faith?
So the United States military is just a microcosm of the larger representation out there. Right. So we have some people that are more observant, but they're like the vast majority of Jews in America, not necessarily outwardly Torah observant. The vast majority of Jews in the military are not necessarily Torah outwardly observant, but they still have that neshama, and it's every Jew's job to light up another fellow Jew's neshama and to positively infuse them.
It's the most amazing thing to have a challah bake, and you have people that are not religious to be there and baking challah and take it home, and then they put it in their oven, and then they write to me and say, "Oh my gosh, we have challah for Shabbos, and I lit candles."
Wow. And do you find that people in that situation, like when you are in danger or when you are in a hardship, that's when the people are really seeking God and seeking their faith?
Oh, I think so.
I definitely think people are more intuitive. They're more inquisitive. They're asking more questions. When you're confronted with your own demise, you tend to become much more introspective.
If you look at teenagers, say 18 to 25, and they're not in the military, I don't know how religious they are outside the military. They come in the military and they're in Iraq or Afghanistan at that time, or they're here now in Germany. They become much more religious. I could tell you that when I did a menorah lighting ceremony, you can look at it online.
Why don't you tell that story?
Well, we had a menorah lighting ceremony when Saddam Hussein, we had captured him, and I knew where he was at.
So it was 2005.
2005, and in December, the first night of Hanukkah in December 2005 was actually December 25th. So we didn't really think a lot of Jews would be there, because what happens is in the military, and this is a great thing in the military, Christians or I should say non-Jews will serve for Jews in the military on Rosh Hashanah and Passover. And Jews will definitely serve on Christmas Day and Easter. And what's interesting, people go, oh, what's the big deal? There's not that many Jews. Well, when somebody wants to go to the DFAC, which is where you eat in Iraq or Afghanistan, where they bring in comedians and Dallas Cowboy cheerleaders and stuff like that, and you have 5,000 or 6,000 Jews serving those Christians out on the front lines. And those Christians are now back in camp. They're not being killed. It's a beautiful thing when those Jews are serving. So we didn't protect, right? So we didn't think that there would be Jews that would be there on December 25th, because I actually had forgotten what December 25th was in the real world, because I was so busy trying to capture bad guys, working for JIADF, Joint Interagency Task Force. I was so busy trying to capture bad guys, I had forgotten what December 25th was. And I know that sounds silly, but when you're in Iraq, you kind of forget normal dates. And so I put on there to come have kosher potato pancakes, to come light the menorah on December 25th. So then I had the menorah built. It was put into Saddam Hussein's palace. And so I figured maybe 10 or 15 Jews might be there. And maybe
you had access to the palace? Like it was just open for everyone?
Yes, the Al Palace. So I'll tell you the story real quick. I didn't really have access. So like a day or two ahead of time, I was so busy trying to capture bad guys, I had called Moshe and I said, I made a mistake. I put it out to about 160,000 coalition emails.
Yeah, we sent it to all distribution. We hit that button, it says all.
So I sent out the email, please come to the Al Palace, but I didn't have permission. So I went to Moshe and he says, uh-oh, you didn't get permission? You better go get permission. So there was a Catholic 06 on-camp victory. He says, start walking over and I'm going to make arrangements for you to go there right away. So I walked over to him and I knocked on the door and he says, come in. And he says, are you Laurie? I said, yes, because that time they knew me as Laurie. My name's Leah Bracha, but they knew me as Laurie, which I happen to love the name Laurie. And they said, he said, what's this thing about a menorah? So I showed him the form and he's reading it, the flyer, and he goes, he's reading it. He goes, this is great. I said, oh, thank you, Father. Thank you so much. He says, what can I do for you? I said, I don't have permission. He goes, oh, don't worry about it. You have my permission. I said, oh, thank you so much, Father. He says, what do you need now? You're done? I said, no, sir. I need to make kosher potato pancakes. So he starts writing it out. He says, give this to the dining facility. They'll let you in the back. It looks like a giant supermarket. He says, I'm sure you could find it. I go, oh, thank you so much, Father. He says, that's it, you're done? I said, no, sir, just one last thing. I promise I'll get out of here. I'm so sorry, Colonel. He says, what is it? I go, I don't have a menorah. He says, what? So he calls up this guy. He says, who's this? He says, Captain David so-and-so. He says, I need a menorah for Hanukkah. He says, no, I need a menorah. He goes, don't worry about it. I'm going to send someone over. So he hung up. He goes, go to the engineers. So they said, we'll build it for you.
Amazing. Wow.
Yeah. I said, thank you so much. They said, we love helping out our soldiers. So they built it. So they actually built it. They made it bigger. They made it, I think it was like 10 by 12 feet. It was huge. They put it in the Al Palace. So I expected maybe 10 Jews to come.
Explain who the Al Palace was.
The Al Palace is where General George Casey and all the military. It's where Saddam Hussein used to beat people, run stuff. Yeah. It was amazing, and they used to have like a bench, and people used to sit on the bench. It was like a bench where Saddam Hussein used to sit on, and he would say, "Oh, kill this person, do this." So anyway, I thought maybe it'd be 10 Jews and the rest non-Jews. But when I got there were a couple hundred Jews there, and you can see pictures online. Wow. So I would go to different Jews and ask them, why are you here? Because I was pretty angry, not to be mean or rude, but I felt that the Jews should have served for the Christians outside the line. So I went to one Jew and I said, "You're infantry. Why are you here?" And he said, "Because I told my Christian buddy I'm going to serve for him." And he got very angry with me. And he said, "Well, then we'll both be serving outside the line. You need to be with the menorah."
Wow.
And I said,
Wow, that's so
"Why?"
special.
I said, "Why? This doesn't make sense." And he said, "Because during the Gulf War, Saddam Hussein sent over 39 Scud missiles to kill Jews."
Hmm.
He says, "You need to be there," because he did it to Israel. So I asked somebody else, I said, "You're a helicopter pilot. Why are you here? Why aren't you flying?" I was pretty upset. He says, "Because my Christian helicopter pilot told me then we'll all be in the helicopter pilot. You need to go be with the menorah." And it all had to do with Saddam Hussein wanting to murder Jews. And I'll explain why this happened. I used to go to the Green Zone once a week. In Baghdad, there was a place called the Green Zone. And I used to have to speak to generals there. And there was, it looks like a mosque, like a round top on. And if you look on one side of the mosque, you could see missiles going up. You go, okay, Saddam Hussein put missiles going up. But if you look on the other side,
It was a mural.
It's a mural.
Yeah, you have to explain that.
Yeah, a mural. And on the other side, it was Jerusalem.
Hmm.
And I asked them, "Why don't we paint over it? Let me put white on there and I'll paint over it." Because I used to be very athletic back then. And they said, "No, we have to return it the way we found it." So people see this. They
People
knew
see
what
what it
was
was all
going
about.
on. So even if they weren't very aware in 91, 92, like you were in high school, we were in high school, like they could see what's going on. There's no,
That's so endearing that first of all the Jews, so many Jews showed up, and also that the Christians wanted them to show up. They understood the
absolutely.
value of it.
plus there were
That's really
Christians there. At the base of the menorah was the hardcore chorale. They were a Christian choir group from special forces, and they were singing Hanukkah songs at the base
wow.
of the menorah. So we first of all, the menorah had bulbs on it, so you can't really do a bracha, a blessing on it. So we actually did the bracha, we did the blessing on a flame down below, and then we did the light on the menorah. And so they asked me to speak. So that time I didn't speak so much. I just said basically that Saddam Hussein was a very dark person, and he tried to kill a lot. He wanted to spread darkness, and our job is to spread light. And our job is to spread light here and to spread light everywhere we go for both Christians and Jews, is to go out and spread light.
That's really beautiful. That's really so special. That's incredible. I mean, you're both doing such incredible work in what you're doing and helping Jews all around the world to reignite their faith.
And Christians too. We love the Christian.
Christians
We
too.
love our Christian
Absolutely.
chaplains.
Christians helping them to
Absolutely.
feel their faith and feel their belief in God. Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, so as a chaplain, right, I don't just serve the Jews. A lot of people think that, oh, yeah, as Jewish chaplain, you're involved with Jews. The truth is that the majority of the people are non-Jews. So chaplain is in charge of, depending what echelon they work at, they're assigned to the soldiers in their unit, their command, depending what echelon they're working at, right? So you're not just working with one denomination. As a chaplain, you're really working with multiple faiths and people even without a faith. So you are representing, as a rabbi and as a Chabad shliach, you're representing Yiddishkeit to all these different people. But, the Rebbe was very clear in the fact that everyone has a different path towards Hashem. And that's why the 7 laws of B'nai Noach, the 7 laws which God gave Noah, are universal principles. And I spend a lot of time with the non-Jews teaching those principles and spreading that message.
And how do they receive that?
The majority of them are very interested. Very interesting. The U.S. military, particularly the Army, probably about 4 or 5 years ago, we did about almost a 4 or 5 year study. We were interested in spirituality, and the findings of the study were very, very. A lot of people were surprised by them. I was not. But this is what they explained to us. We looked at different demographics by age. And what we determined is that the younger demographic, 18 to 24, 18 to 25, spiritually had more in common with the older generation of the U.S. Army, the 40 plus, 45 plus. So the very junior had more in common spiritually with the very senior. And what they explained and what they learned through the course of the study was that the children of baby boomers, they looked at their parents' generation and they saw that their parents had taken their spirituality by rote. It wasn't necessarily significantly meaningful. So they were more part of the counterculture. And they said, this doesn't resonate with us. We did things we were forced to, but we saw that our parents didn't really get it. So we're going to, like every young generation does, we're going to go up and we're going to go against it. And that filled in the majority of our mid-level leaders, 30 to like 45, that age limit. So they did not want to have anything to do with spirituality. The very young people were looking at their leaders saying, they're kind of messed up morally, mentally. Maybe we need spirituality. Maybe there's something more to it. And then they looked at that older generation. They're saying, well, they have some spirituality, even if it's by rote, but they're a little bit more connected people-wise, and they have more of a central understanding. So we really want to be more like the older generation, and we want to skip over that middle generation, our immediate leaders. So our 18 to 24 had more in common with our 45 plus in terms of how they felt with their spirituality. Now that big delta, that huge gap of 25 to about 45, that 20-year span was part of that counterculture. So then the challenge became, how do we take the leaders from ages 25 to 45 who are part of a counterculture, didn't want to be spiritual, but yet are leading younger individuals who want to be spiritual? How do you empower them? How do you give them a vernacular to which they're comfortable talking about spirituality? Because you want to combat what's happening in the young people's lives positively. The young people have a variety of mixed messages, right? They're bombarded and bombasted with multimedia, which can be both good and bad. But they're caught up in a lot of superficial things. And they have all these mixed messages, and they're very high emotional, and it's a very demanding job. And we see that suicide rates are rising. We're seeing that people making a litany of poor choices, all the various things that are just very unhealthy. And there's a true need for spirituality to root them. And these young people want this spirituality as an anchor, but their immediate leaders know nothing of it because they looked at it and they said, oh, it's a farce because it was presented to us kind of poorly from our parents' generation.
Right.
So then the challenge became, how do we educate them as leaders to have a spiritual conversation when you're not comfortable with spirituality? And I used a lot of the vernacular of the Rebbe's teachings, universal concepts and universal principles. And not just me. I mean, each chaplain did it, but I think the Lubavitch chaplains were able to, we had more of the grasp too. They were able to lead this, I wouldn't say lead, but we were able to participate in this movement. And we developed a lot of programs to empower them. So that's another example of where we were able to take our religious upbringing and the Rebbe's teachings to bring them to fruition and teach them, whether it be books through like Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. And then some Viktor Frankl, a lot of his writings resonated with them, or Simon Jacobson's
Toward a
Meaningful Life, other universal concepts that we're giving them.
The one thing I wanted to say also is, as his wife, I would just like to say, hearing my husband on the phone telling somebody to put down drugs so they don't kill themselves, telling them to put down a gun, telling them, stay there, I'll be right there. Telling them, I'm going to go away from the child. Telling them the amount of times my husband has stopped them from killing themselves is an amazing thing. My husband has a master's degree from Fordham University. He has multiple master's degrees. He's already just about ready to finish up his PhD. He's done so much to stop people from killing themselves. A lot of people, it used to be people that got back from Iraq and Afghanistan, they wanted to kill themselves. Now it's young people who never deployed, that are trying to kill themselves. It's really a dramatic thing.
So, I mean, I think
And
every chaplain can share a similar theme,
Correct.
similar story, we have
right.
similar experiences.
But I find it beautiful how you're sharing spirituality and the Rebbe's teachings and how it's resonating with this
Yes.
younger group, which is
Absolutely.
Yes.
really
And what was
such a ray
nice,
of light. It's such a
Yes.
ray of light that you're seeing in the younger
yeah.
generations.
So
Yes.
it empowered us, and they gave us a vehicle and a mechanism to have that conversation because we at least had a spiritual mentor to look to, and we had an example. Other faith groups
Right.
had to figure it out amongst their own theology and trying to meet other guidelines that
100%.
were developed higher.
Sure.
But we had a
For
blueprint,
sure.
so to speak, that would
Yes.
made it much easier for us. So that's an example, where Hasidic Judaism, we're able to tap into it and bring it into us and show
Absolutely.
and
Thank you.
empower us. Yeah. So the
Right.
example.
Wow. Moshe and Laurie Lans, wish you continued success in shining your light into
Thank
so
you.
many people and igniting their faith from the meeting that you had. We're all so lucky that you guys met there in Iraq, that we have you as this power couple, this power team who can really infuse the next generation with this faith that you're talking about and help the Jewish people who are in service do
Thank you.
find their Judaism. Thank you so much for joining us.
God
Thank you so
bless
much.
you.
Thank you
Thank
for
you
the
so
opportunity.
much.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.
Wow, there were so many parts to this interview with Leah Bracha and Moshe Lans. Moshe serves, of course, as the chaplain, and Leah Bracha at his side, doing those challah bakes, teaching those classes, and just in general being that supportive role who has previously served in the Navy. I'd love to hear their story of how they got to the U.S. Army, what motivated them to get there. I really enjoyed hearing about how they were both introduced to Torah Judaism and how now those people who were introduced to Torah Judaism are teaching so many Jews around the world the beauty of joy and the beauty of Hasidic teachings, the beauty of Torah. I particularly really appreciated their story about how they brought that Megillah to Afghanistan. I love the story about how they met in Iraq, how on Yom Kippur they actually met each other there after Laurie or Leah Bracha had walked so many miles in the heat to pray together with other Jews. That was a beautiful story. I love the story of the lighting of the menorah in Saddam Hussein's palace. And I think that really shows how Jewish history has come full circle, how the person who really tried to just destroy the Jewish people, sending Scuds to completely demolish us, was himself demolished. And it was in his palace that we light the menorah, of course, the symbol of Judaism, the symbol of faith, the symbol of that light, that candle constantly burning, and how our candle is never going to be diminished. That was really beautiful. I wonder which part of this interview you enjoyed. I wonder what lesson you learned from it. I think their message is really clear that no matter where we are, whether it be in Afghanistan, Germany, Iraq, or anywhere around the world, there's something that each and every one of us can do to help another person to ignite their spirituality, their faith, whether it be to a Jew or a non-Jew. They do both. They teach the 7 Noahide laws to the non-Jews as well as Judaism to the Jews. If you appreciated this interview, tell us what you liked about it. Give us a like if you're watching on YouTube or Spotify. If you are not subscribed, please make sure that you do subscribe to Chabad.org/extraordinary. Thank you so much for watching and for being part of this extraordinary community.